Welcome to the interview presented by Alabama Wrestling Forums. I'm Jackson Bast here with former SIUE Cougar and four-time Alabama State champ Brandon Brindley. How you doing today, Brandon?
Hey man, I'm good. Just took a little vacation down to Alabama for a few days, and then gonna get back up to Nashville on Wednesday night. Get back to business.
Awesome. So let me start out by asking you, what got you into wrestling?
Well, I wrestled for so long. It's kind of hard to remember, but I assume it was my dad. I started wrestling when I was 4, so I don't technically remember like a actual event or something. But my dad wrestled in high school, did some coaching, and then I don't ever really remember starting wrestling. It was just kind of something I always did. So but I would definitely say it was probably my dad.
So where'd you pick up wrestling youth?
Well, I think I started wrestling like right when I moved to Alabama. So I was like 4. And then I lived in Hoax Bluff. And then I think when I moved to the Birmingham area, I don't know exactly how old I was, but that's when I got connected with Rod Gaddy. But I'd already been wrestling for, I would say, at least 3 or 4 years at that point in time when I hooked up with Rod.
So, you mentioned that you wrestled for Rod Gaddy. How did, wrestling with Rod kind of take you to the next level?
Well, especially at the time, that was hold on a second. I lost my screen. Okay, I'm back. Sorry. Yeah, at the time, Rod was kind of the only person that was doing anything like that. And we were going to all these major tournaments and stuff like that. And so it kind of, especially if you want to be the next level wrestler, you got to go to all those big events. And, back in the day, AWC was, really the only club that I can think about that was kind of doing anything like that. But we're talking 15 years ago or more is when I met Rod. So, it was very far and few between any kind of wrestling club, especially clubs that were going to like Beast of the East or Tulsa Nationals or Fargo or anything like that. Just there wasn't anybody else around. So that was kind of another way that I got stuck with Rod is 1, he was the only person doing it, and 2, he was doing the stuff that was next level,
So, obviously you had a phenomenal high school career. You were a 4-time Alabama State champ. Obviously people, when I ask people, they're usually like, oh, I could have always done better. And I know you feel the same. But a 4-time state champ is, phenomenal. Obviously, you're going in there as a freshman and you win your first state title. What kind of gave you the confidence to do so?
Well, so in 7th grade, I think I got 4th place. I think I weighed like 89 pounds, maybe wrestling 103. And then so I won my first state championship in 8th grade, 2nd and 9th. And then I got so 8th grade, 9th grade, I won. I lost in 10th grade. I got 2nd, and then I won 11th and 12th grade year as well. So by the time I was even in high school, I'd already won a state championship. But I think the big thing for me was, 1, I was already better than most kids around here, but like my high school program was brand new. So when I was a 7th grader, I kind of had to go in there. I knew I was already better than everybody on my team, so I kind of just had to show it. I was the, kind of like the team captain all the way from 7th grade up. But it was something that I had already been there. So that, just having already have trained hard for a long time, it was nothing new. And everybody that I was wrestling with on my team, they were 1st, 2nd year wrestlers. So, I'd just already been doing it for so long that it wasn't necessarily anything new. That's just the program was new, but other than that.
So, you mentioned that it was a new program. Then what was the biggest learning curve for, obviously you're all the way up here and these guys are maybe, down over here. What was the biggest learning curve of your training partners and helping those guys out?
I guess maybe our first coach, just having coaches that necessarily didn't really, they definitely tried hard and stuff, but they weren't to a certain level. Even like simple things, simple moves, like, that's kind of like what we were doing. That was kind of all we were doing. So, the guys were tough, but just wrestling with them made everybody tougher over time. Um, but I kind of did a lot of the coaching and stuff when I was seventh, eighth, ninth grade, all the way up. If we were learning any kind of new moves, it was because I was bringing them in, having already trained them at AWC. Just kind of the experience level, but those guys were all older than me, so we all competed well with each other, and it kind of just grew everybody up, and we ended up having several state champions over the next 4 or 5 years.
So you mentioned you're trained at AWC, and you were there with what year did you graduate? I want to make sure.
Graduated in 2012, so my teammate Elliot Kahn, he got second, but then the years before us we had like Travis Shellnut, he won a state title. I know you talked with Josh Pate, he had placed like third or fourth. And then we had Rob Glenn, he won a state title. And he was like a senior when I was in seventh grade, I think, maybe, seventh grade. So,
Well, over at AWC, obviously you were in the room with people like Tanner Moon, Robert Dyer, all the big named guys, and obviously Rod produced numerous Division I athletes. What was going on in that room?
Man, I was crazy. So, and we had like Jeffrey Boston in there, even Tommy, his little brother. We had Nick Hall, we had Tanner, Robert, Stephen West, Keaton Thompson. I remember when AWC first started, my only practice partner was Keaton Thompson. And I think he was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years older than me. And I was probably in like fifth grade or something, or maybe even younger than that. He was my only practice partner. Tyler Osborne. But those guys, they were always older than me by a few years, but I would still go in there and compete with them. So they would have like Fargo training camps, and I wasn't even old enough to go, but I was going to all those training camps every day. The 3-a-days when we were at Pizitz Middle School years and years ago. And so, I mean, it was crazy. We were all beating the crap out of each other all the time. And, I think that's why a lot of us ended up doing so well, is we always had somebody to compete with. Even when I wasn't going to Fargo, I was in there wrestling with those guys. And, it was just a good atmosphere.
So the big question: why SIUE?
That's I had looked at some other places, and that one just felt most like home. It was a good campus. I mean, we had like 2,000 acres, outdoors. But when I first went there, kind of this all ties into everything else in my life, which is kind of weird. But I went and stayed the freshman dorms, and there was this guy named Josh Wood, and he had wrestled at somewhere in Nevada, a college. I'm trying to think of it. It's the only college in Nevada that's has wrestling, really. But his roommate was Marty Carlson, and Marty Carlson was him and his brother Henry also wrestled at Vestavia. They were from Virginia. And then so I met Josh, and he's like, "Oh, you're from Alabama? My old roommate Marty Carlson was from Alabama." And I was like, "Me and Marty are great friends." And me and Josh just kind of hit it off there. That mutual connection was one of the reasons that I chose to go out there. But then also just it was just a place I liked. I could see myself living for a few years. So.
So during your time over at SIUE, you had a change of head coach. Was that a big challenge for you guys as a team?
Yeah, so we had man, what was our first David Ray, I think. Yeah, D Ray. Yeah, he was our first coach my first year, and man, the guy, I mean, he was just at the end of his line. And that kind of shaped the rest of my college wrestling. Is that guy, he was, I think he's all right guy, but it was just, he did a lot of things that weren't great, and he was just kind of hard to wrestle for. And I mean, I think for a lot of us, that was the, even though it was the start of our career, it was maybe the end of it too. Just after that first year with him, we got a great coach in Jeremy Spates from Cornell, and Coach Spates, I can't say enough nice things about him. He's a great guy. But after that first year with David Ray, I mean, it was pretty hard for a lot of people. Just, I mean, the atmosphere in the room wasn't good. So that kind of set the tone for the rest of everything for me. That's when kind of wrestling became less important for me, is after that first year, not having a great head coach or somebody that was kind of already on his way out and wasn't very motivated. um, it was kind of contagious. It spread to a lot of the guys on our team that were really good and ended up not doing anything because they ended up hating it after that first year, not having a good coach.
So, and I talked about it with Jeffrey, you guys went, a ways from Alabama, he
Right.
went to Penn, you went to Southern Illinois, or yeah. So, what were some things that you kind of wish you had told yourself? Obviously, you're an 18-year-old and you're going far away. Was there anything you kind of like wish you had told yourself about it, or things you found out later in your career that made it easier to be that far away?
No, I mean, for me, I've always liked being away. I've always been, like one that's likes to travel, get out of the house as much as possible. So for me, it wasn't um, being away that was necessarily a problem. It was doing something that I wasn't all the way in anymore. And that can make it harder to be away too. So I would definitely say anybody that's going to go away to college and wrestle, you definitely got to be in it full time. And for me, that wasn't necessarily something I was capable of doing. I had to work. I mean, I would leave practice and go wash dishes from 6 to 2, 3 in the morning every night just to kind of stay afloat. So, for me, it wasn't the most important thing in the world to be the best wrestler anymore. Um, so that kind of made it harder being away, but that made it the whole experience in general. I wouldn't take it back, but for other people thinking about doing it, you're going to be miserable if you're not 100% loving wrestling. I'd already been wrestling for 20 years by the time I went off to college, or something like that. And so for me, I was kind of already over it, but it was still a great experience. And I met people like my old roommate, and that's how I ended up in Nashville. And hopefully one day the rest will be history off of that move. But so I wouldn't take anything back, but there were some challenges for sure if you're not all the way in it.
So, there are a lot of Alabama wrestlers who went Division One who don't stay at college for 4 years.
Right.
That happens quite a bit. So, what was something you had to keep telling yourself to stay at college?
Well, after I was in college for a couple of years, I realized that college wasn't necessarily for me. But are you gonna stop going to college after you're 2, 3 years in? That I don't have that in me, just to be like, all right, I'm just gonna quit and just burn these last few years, call them a loss. So me, it was just more about just getting through it. Even though my head wasn't necessarily all in it for wrestling, it's still setting out to accomplish something that you're setting out to do. I mean, getting out of college was still a goal of mine. Even though I didn't like being there, I still wanted to accomplish my goal. And being there ended up leading me to certain other places in life that I think really showed me what I was actually supposed to do with my life.
So, I'm going to talk about your music career in a sec, but I don't know. I think one of the funniest things ever is when I was doing my prep for you. There's this your freshman it was your actual freshman. You had your redshirt your freshman year, and it's you in this buzz and the glasses. And then I'm looking at you right now. I'm like, that's two completely different people. I thought it was,
Right. Yeah, I probably went through some different styles. I think when I went to college, I had a buzzed head, and then I think next year I had a mullet. I think Coach Spates loved that. I think he actually ended up making me get it cut at some point in time because he kept getting in my face when I was wrestling, and then we would always do the mustaches, this wrestling thing. Sure So I don't know. The style's definitely changed a lot over the last few years.
well, see now when I think of you now, I definitely think of the hat. The hat is just like a trademark at this point. It's one of the
Right.
coolest hats I've ever seen.
Well,
So.
thank you.
So obviously, you're a rising country music star. So why'd you pick country?
So country music necessarily has not been something that, I think I grew more up on like classic rock, like Leonard Skinner, Led Zeppelin. But I think the thing that's definitely authentic about me is when I set out to write a song, I'm not setting out to write a country song. That's just how they come out. If you listen to a lot of my music, there's different styles. It's not all some of it's really traditional, some of it's more Americana. But I didn't set out to write country songs. That's just what I was doing. The thing about country songwriting, the people that are really good at it, they tell life stories, and nothing in those songs are fabricated. Like one of my favorite, Billy Joe Shaver, he's not using $10 words in his songs because that guy doesn't know any $10 words. Country music wasn't something I set out to do. It is just what I do. There was no plan. I'm going to go do country music. That's just how it happens.
So what led you to Nashville?
So like I was saying earlier, my roommate, Josh Wood, in college, uh, when he graduated college, he ended up moving to Nashville and he got a job there. And I was going through some stuff up in Illinois, and I knew my time was burning. I had to do something. I had to get out, or just things weren't going very well for me. And then so he called me up one day and said, "Hey, I've got a job," and he said, "I can get you hired." And I said, "I'll leave tomorrow. Let's get this rolling as fast as possible." And then after I moved to Nashville, I'd kind of already been writing songs and playing guitar for years, and I started getting into the culture of everything, and I realized that that's what I wanted to do. And then so I quit my job working with Josh, but that's how I ended up in Nashville. Was one of my college teammates from SIUE. So like I said earlier, I wouldn't take anything back because it ended up leading me to where I am now. Even though it might not have been my greatest decision, it still, I think, led me to where I needed to be.
I do want to say that I listen to some of your music, and honestly, my favorite is definitely your newest hit single, "The Crying All the Way."
Crying away.
That one was really cool.
I appreciate it.
I don't know, a lot of those you're away because I wrestle in Virginia, so being kind of away, it kind of makes sense.
Right. Yeah. And, that's like I was saying earlier, you write songs about your experiences, whether they're good or bad. And, that's just one of the many songs I've got coming out this year. I got another 3 songs and a full album coming out this year. So that'll be my 3rd album. I got a big year plan. It's all about little gains over time. You got to have those little goals and set out and try to accomplish them. And, that this year is a big year as far as trying to make some headway and, make some stuff work.
Well, if any of my viewers are interested, I am going to leave a link down to Brandon's Spotify in the bio. So definitely check him out. I really enjoy it. If you like country music, you're definitely going to enjoy a lot of his stuff. Well, before I let you go, is there anything you want to say to my viewers?
Yeah. So, people that are going to the next level, I definitely hope that you seek out as many different tournaments and stuff, training partners. All that stuff really matters. You need to be thinking about the next level stuff before you go to the next level. You don't want to get to the next level and be like, man, I wish I would have done this tournament. I wish I would have trained extra. Just if you're trying to be the best, try to be the best. If you're going to go to the next level, make sure that's really something that you want to do. And that's really all I got to say.
Awesome. Well, Brandon, thank you so much for joining me. And thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay cool. I've been wrestling.
All right. See you guys.